What's up, folks? Sean the Average Angler coming at you with another great video, and it is just about October. We have overcast outside. Looks like it's going to rain. According to weather, it's not going to until Wednesday. But either way, it puts a charge in my step when we come into October because it is such a fantastic time to fish. And we are going to cover the best lures for October. Now, there's going to be a lot of them here. We're going to cover them all, and I'm going to explain to you guys why I'm choosing what I'm choosing, okay? Now, let's just start it off with the obvious. Oh, yeah. And if you're new to the channel, you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button down below. We're on a mission, and at 5,000, we are doing a giveaway again. As we draw closer, I will post a giveaway video to explain all that kind of stuff, and then we'll go from there. But one of the first things that I want to touch on and what I want to do when I go look for fish in the fall is if I've got shallow cover. And you saw it in my video this past weekend, flipping the two leaves. Shallow fishing is fun, and if there's a bite there, you don't want to miss out on it. So I'm going to be flipping some sort of creature bait. This happens to be a D-bomb. I started out that day with a Strike King Rage Bug, mostly because I was out of Fat Pack Swamp Monsters and I'm waiting on an order to get here. Flipping some sort of creature bait back into those tulies as deep as I can get them seemed to be where the fish were at. And quite honestly, as the water temps start to cool, that's typically where we're going to find them. They're going to bound up in there a little bit more and look for cover. Now, grass is starting to die in most places, so the grass might not be quite as appealing early in the day, which is why I was flipping tulies. Well, and my lake doesn't have any grass, but that's a great place to look. Now, another bait that you're going to want to have tied on, and this is the time of year, folks, where we got a deck covered in baits, I like the compact pitch and jig. This happens to be Dirty Jigs. You can go with whatever brand you like. I just like compact. Nice stout hook, good weed guard, which I would thin down a little bit. Not my favorite with the rubber band holding the skirt. You know, it is what it is. I'm going to retie this because most of the skirt material is down on the bottom also. But you can spin it around with the collar. Once it's tied, you won't be able to move it. Okay, but I'm going to pair this with a trailer. Now, one thing I do want to say, don't feel like you have to match the trailer to the jig. This isn't the best example, but this is a black, blue, and purple jig with a PB&J trailer on it. But I wouldn't hesitate to throw a green pumpkin with blue flake or something like that on there. This is the jig I was throwing this weekend. And although the colors are similar, it's also very contrasting, right? Now this is that Bass Union Finesse jig. This is where I'm going to go for the deeper jig bite. Now I didn't want to skip over where we're going to look for these pitching fish. Typically around hard cover, okay? Some kind of hard cover, because the fish are going to get out of that grass. They're not completely going to leave it. They're going to go back. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But that pitch and jig around hard cover could be dock pilings, preferably laydowns, things like that. Brush in the water, that's pretty thick stuff where that jig's going to bounce around as it goes down over the branches. These are good places to find fish. Again, if they're not creating shade, I'm going to look for these early because where I live, as that sun gets high, we also tend to get warmer temperatures a lot of times. So the nighttime might be cold, the morning might be chilly, but as that afternoon sun gets up there, those fish that are hanging out in that shallow water are going to look for some shade. And that's when some of these dying clumps can be really good. They don't produce a lot of oxygen and stuff, but they still have enough in the water typically around them, and the fish are really looking for shade. Those could be good places to go flip around the edges of or into when you're there. Now the other one, of course, is punching. Okay, if you do have grass like we do on the Delta here, the grass really isn't going to go anywhere. We got current, all that kind of stuff. We got types of grass that survive pretty well there. And punching can be a great way to find fish shallow this time of year too. See, this is what I mean. There's so many different things, and it really depends on the fishery you have. On the Delta, if I was going out there, I would definitely be looking for that punch bite. Okay, there's going to be a punch bite. Sometimes it's in stuff you don't think is very good. Could be small, could be shallow. Those fish still want to be in there. It's a shallow water fishery, and they're going to try and tuck up in there. All right. Another one that I absolutely love this time of year, and this is a bit more faster moving, is a chatterbait. And I'm going to go with a shad pattern. Okay, could be white, could be that, I think that's called natural shad or something. Either way, I want white. I'm going to put some type of white trailer on it, whether it's a single tail grub, whether it is a fluke type bait or a spunk shad. Whatever you use for a trailer is fine on your chatterbaits, but I'm going to impart an action on that bait. And this is what I found with the chatterbait this time of year. A few of my lakes, we have deep water and shallow, and I've just found that those bigger fish will stay up a little longer than the most of the fish, and you can trigger those fish into biting with some erratic movements in that bait. So this is when I'm doing a little twitch. I'm burning the bait and then I'll twitch it. Or if you prefer, you can speed the reel up for a turn and then kill it. You want that bait to kind of dart, okay, and then stop, and that fish is going to run into it and plow it. And that's how I've caught some really big fish in the fall. They just have a hard time handling that erratic action, and I feel it necessary this time of year to put that erratic action in it. Okay, well, you thought I wasn't going to say anything about topwater, but I am. And I'm pretty much going to go with two different type colors, okay? One's transparent, whatever transparent type color, that's for clear. Low light or dirtier water, I like the bone. These, a lot of times on my body's water, now look, they're very situational. If the bite's really on, you can catch a lot of fish on them. If the bite's not really on, that's the time when you tend to get your big fish bites on them. It's just something you can't rule out. And like I said, it's that time of year where you need to have a lot of things rigged. Well, you don't need to. To optimize things, you probably want to. I know the average angler sure does. In a sense of covering more water, the Chopo, same thing, bone or black. I'm going to keep it pretty darn simple. Chopo, whopper, plopper, whatever your desire. Great baits in the fall when the fish are up chasing. Okay, you're on a deeper fishery and those fish start moving deeper, getting back to that jig. And here is a 1/2 ounce football. This one happens to be a 5/8. I really like 5/8, 3/4. If I'm fishing a little over 12 feet or deeper, I really like the heavier weight. This is a sand tone. That's a good jig. Dirty jigs, you know, you want the round rubber. I really prefer the Bass Union. You guys saw the fish eat that this past weekend on the video, or actually that one came out Monday. That one fish, man, I couldn't even find the hook shank with the pliers. I nailed that fish. He was right in the roof of the mouth. They really like that living rubber, that round rubber. Just moves a lot in the water, and man, when they commit to eating it, they eat it really, really well. For that kind of stuff, I'm looking for hard bottom. Okay, this week I happen to be catching them along channel edges, so right where it dropped off into the deep water. Now keep in mind, my lake's not that deep. For some of you it might be really deep, but for me it's just more of a shallower lake. That main creek channel drops into about 40 to 42 foot. The majority of the lake is in the 20s, except for those areas where that main creek channel is. And I was literally just following the edges of that where it dropped from 30 to 40, because it seemed to do that, almost like it was trenched out all the way around. And with that, you will find rock and hard bottom. So I had a lot of cover to pull it through. I got some really good bites there. And then the other fish, the biggest fish, came on actually the side of a point that dropped off into that. So it was steep all the way from the top. And I really like fishing those because they're really easy to fish. All you have to do is lightly tap that line and it will keep nudging that jig forward, and as it's going forward, it's dropping down a little bit. So you're kind of allowing it to do natural movement down the bank. It's just a really easy way to fish it. Very convenient when the fish are on that type of stuff. Hey, I got a nice fish out of it, almost 5 pounds at 4.15. And who knows, the scale may be off about 5 pounds, right? All right, now you could fish this shallow, but I would rather, all right, let's go back to shallow. Glide bait or mag draft, something like that, something to cover the middle column of the water, something with a little more presence that's gonna draw fish. Again, we're dealing with aggressive fish that are on the feed, and we're offering them something a little bit bigger to eat. We're not talking about giant glide baits here. You don't need to do that. 6, 7 inch glide bait. The 6-inch mag draft has always been a staple of mine. Hey, they got the 5 now too. Depending on your fishery, you want something that's gonna stand out a little bit. So if you're dealing with 3 or 4 inch shad, maybe you throw the 5. Although the 5, remember, is 4.5 inches. Proven right here on the Average Angler channel. The 6 is just gonna stand out pretty much, okay? And again, I'm going to use colors that are basic, white, I don't remember what they call it, but it's essentially a whiter bone, if you will. It has good drawing power. The fish like it. It's just a great bait to fish. And then the glide bait, again, I'm going to fish it pretty aggressively. I want something choppy so I can chop it back and forth. Just a great way to cover water, especially flats, high percentage spots. If you have little marinas like we have on some of our lakes, they narrow down to these little mouths going in and out. Hey, these are great places to look for ambush and fish, okay? Smaller coves that neck down, bridges, these kinds of things. Anywhere that necks down and creates an area where they can hold shad around, good spots to look for those with those bigger, more aggressive baits. Moving back into the deeper water. So we went over the football jig. The next bait I really love to fish this time of year is a wobblehead, okay? It's very similar to fishing a jig. I consider it a jig, but it's allowing me to cover water a little bit faster. And you can really mimic a number of species based on the bait you pick and the color that you want to fish. Now there's a ton of different baits out there you can fish. You can fish the Fat Pack Swamp Monster. You can fish the freaking Strike King Rage Bug. You can fish a Yamamoto Cowboy. You can fish the Zoom Z-Craw is a good one. X-Zone Adrenaline Craw. Your pick. You probably have some of these. I wouldn't say to go out and buy anything special, but put something on there, one of those that has some good kicking appendages in the back, and then just choose a color that is mimicking what you like or you think your fish are foraging on. If it's bluegill, maybe you fish a green pumpkin blue or a blue craw type color. Maybe you fish green pumpkin and you use a marker to just put a thin black line on the tips of those claws. You'd be amazed at what it looks like when they're kicking like that. It looks like a tail of a fish. But it's a great way to cover water and hone in on where the fish are feeding at. On top of that, it's a great bait to get bit anyway. I'm telling you, there's just so many different things. It's really hard to leave stuff behind this time of year. And it comes down to what you like to fish. You can fish, I really like the chatterbait because I have the ability to make it juke. Some other baits you could also put in that category would be a squarebill. Squarebill can be fantastic year round, but in the fall and spring in particular. And that's one thing to remember, folks. Oftentimes it will translate. Fall, we're going to fish them a little faster. Spring, we might fish them a little slower. But I'm definitely not ruling out a squarebill of some sort or shallow running crankbait. When you have shallow water to cover, sometimes you need to throw the gamut to figure out what you're going to need to do to trigger that bite. Moving back down into the deeper water, where there's really, I'm a little more narrow-minded on the types of presentations I'm throwing, but you can't leave out that underspin. Okay, and this happens to be a Fat Pack Baits 3.8. I really like to step up again to a little bigger size this time of year. Fat Pack doesn't make a bigger one than that right now. I would go to a Kitech or the Mayer. The Mayer is a little bit bigger. I really like a 4.8 to 5.3 Kitech this time of year. And typically I go with bluegill flash. It looks shady, but it also has some of the bluegill colors in it. Very similar to this, okay? Because this has green pumpkin on top, and then it's got some purple flake mixed into the top of it as well. So this kind of covers both. And really all I'm going to do is, this is a cool baits head, and this is a cool baits head here. You'll see this is really good up to about a 3.8, maybe even a 4.3. Once I get beyond that, I'm going to go to a bait with a little bigger hook. I don't like to overpower my baits with the hook. This is going to be for a 4.3 and bigger. Okay, it's quite a bit bigger hook. It is a Dirty Jigs tackle. And unfortunately, their labeling is terrible. It doesn't say dirty bearing. I'm assuming, looking at it, that that's a 3/8. So you will see here, it is a bigger hook, so it's longer. It's going to go further back in the bait by a pretty good margin, right? But that's fine. You just want to pair up your baits to the heads to give them optimal function for you. That big hook, which I believe is a 3/0, probably 4.3 and bigger. That cool baits, 3.8 and down. Okay, this can go all the way down to a 2.8 and fishes the 2.8s really, really well. So those cool baits are really good. And here's one without a bait on it, as you see. Okay, lighter wire hook. Just pair the baits to what you're fishing. Very simple, but it does make a big difference. Could be the difference in you getting bit or not. If you're on a bigger fishery, you guys have seen me talk about these before. The trash fish. Okay, this is a 6-inch trash fish. Phenomenal bait for crawling bottom. It still isn't giant. You look at the bait top to bottom, it's not a giant bait, but it's a decent meal for a fish that doesn't want to work too hard to get filled up. These are very, very effective, and they're great at crawling across the bottom. You rig them on a 6 to 8/0 beast hook, 1/4 to 3/8, even 1/2 ounce. And you just crawl that baby across the bottom nice and slow. They crush them. These are alternatives. I told you there's a lot of baits, but we really have to decide what we're fishing based on where we're fishing. And that's really when I started to think about this and think about the vast fisheries that are so different that I fish on a normal basis. It's very difficult to narrow it down. Now you see a lot of these baits are similar. We're just adjusting for each waterway. Yeah, that's a great one. Following up the swim baits, we've got another deep one. And again, deep is relative, okay? Because we're gonna be talking anywhere from 12 feet down to 30. Okay, and that's gonna be the crankbait. Deep diving crankbait. This is a great one. If you guys aren't familiar, that is a 5XD by Strike King. That's gonna run you about 14, 15 feet, 16 feet, somewhere around there. So you get the point, okay? I love the crawdad patterns in the fall, okay? But you gotta keep the shad patterns honest. And this is a DT14 by Rapala. Much bulkier bait, a balsa type bait. It swims and reacts like a balsa style bait. Okay, then you have XD6 by Strike King, and it says dives 19 feet and beyond. What we really want to be doing with these and how we're deciding the depths to fish, we want to hit bottom. We want that bait deflecting off of rocks and stuff on the bottom. So again, hard cover, and then we can adjust. You see these two, how much different the body size is. You may need to go to a bigger body size like the DTs, or you may need a smaller profile size like the XD. Another one in that smaller profile size is this here Berkeley Dredger. This is a 14.5 footer. And I'll tell you a general rule of thumb when I'm picking deeper diver crankbaits. I pick one that says it goes 2 feet beyond what I'm looking for, because I want it to bang off those rocks, deflect, and trigger a strike. Now, of course, once you get beyond that, and we go to a lot of deeper divers here. This one, I believe, is an 8XD Strike King. It is. That's going to run much deeper, probably down to about mid-20s. It's a lot of work running crankbaits down that deep, okay? It takes some effort. You want a long rod to make a long cast. Typically, I'm going to throw it on 12 to 14 pound test. This is a Berkeley dredger, 25.5 feet. And I will say the dredgers dive pretty well. They're not quite as much work as the Strike Kings or maybe some of the other plugs are. That is a 6 cents 500 DD. You just pick the appropriate bait, okay? Some companies don't have the red craw baits. I think for the longest time 6 cents didn't, but I think it's in their custom paint category, which they're quite a bit more expensive. They're great crankbaits. They catch fish, and we're trying to trigger these fish. So a lot of times the shad patterns are what work. Also, you can go to a chartreuse blue type pattern. It's another good one. But crankbaits are a great way to trigger. And I'm telling you, once you find a spot that they're schooled up, all of a sudden the work doesn't seem to bother you too much when you're catching fish after fish after fish. So keep in mind, when we're looking for this bite, that's what we're looking to find. I'm Sean the Average Angler. Thanks for watching. I'm sure I forgot some. October's a great time to catch them. We'll see you on the next one.